Dr. Little. Welcome to Candler and Conversation.
Thank you. It's
I'm
great to be here.
And I'm so honored to have this conversation with you. You're a wealth of knowledge, and I know the people will be blessed by what you have to share today.
Well, I'm honored and blessed to be here, and I appreciate the invitation to be in conversation with you.
Thank you. Thank you. So I want to start by just focusing on the quote from Howard Thurman.
Mm-hmm.
When it talks about in the stillness of quiet, if we listen, we can hear the whisper of the heart. And when I heard that quote, the first thing I wondered was, why do you think Thurman referenced it as a whisper? Like, what happens in our lives in the whisper?
You know, so much in our world, and even as I say in our world, when Thurman wrote those words, it was a different world, but it was still a lot of movement, a lot of noise. And as human beings, we are conditioned more for noise and movement than we are for the whisper, the silence, and the stillness. So I hear Thurman inviting us into the beckoning of a whisper.
Mm.
When we whisper, we have to lean in, we have to get closer, and pay closer attention. Yeah.
How do you help? You're a professor, you're also a pastor, a scholar. So you do this in so many different spaces. So I'm going to ask this question in layers. But just
Mhm.
first, as a professor, how do you invite your students to lean in?
As a professor in whatever class I'm teaching, we always prepare and open the space with a meditation or a devotion. And I invite the students to lead that ritual. So we take turns week after week with our own practice of leaning into the whispers of the material, the whispers of whatever spirit is doing in the classroom. I enjoy sitting at the intersection of scholarship and spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
They are not separate from me, and they shouldn't be separate for the student. So by inviting the students to come in with their own spiritual practice and sharing that with the class is particularly special when we are really listening for the deeper meaning of the material or whatever we're doing in class that day.
Yeah. I want to ask you, because every time I see you, Dr. Little, you're at peace. You seem to just, well, that's what it seems like, right? So I've always thought, like, Dr. Little must have some great spiritual practices that you do in your personal life to just remain as centered as you are. So just tell us about that, like your spiritual walk and how you maintain just your centeredness as you serve in these various capacities.
Well, the first thing or the most fundamental thing is that I try to remember that I am a living, breathing being. So I breathe. Before, when I move from one thing to the next, because we're busy, right? Before I move and after I move, I take a beat, I take a breath, and a cleansing breath. We take our breathing for granted. Most of us breathe right here. But if we just pause between our responsibilities, if we pause between those things that pull and compete for our attention and take a breath, then that gives us an opportunity to recenter and transition more more fully.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. As you were saying that, I was thinking about the times in life that I've been afraid to pause. It's
Mm.
almost like you're running, trying to compete with time. And if you pause, you'll feel like you'll lose the race, right?
Yeah.
So, how do you find really the peace of a pause, right? Like when you choose to pause, when you choose to spend that time and just say, no matter what the world has happening, no matter what my calendar says, this is my time. So, how do you really give yourself permission to pause?
Mm-hmm. You know, when I was a student at Candler, here at Candler, I did CPE at up the hill here at the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And my first week on the floor as a chaplain, I was seeing patient after patient. At that time, I didn't understand the value of the pause. When I got to the end of my first week and I got home and actually paused to reflect on the week, I was emotionally, mentally, and physically exhausted and in tears. And for a while, I didn't understand why. And in the pause, I realized that I was going and going and going and not giving myself the opportunity to release what I grabbed in each space. We're exchanging spirit right now. Your life is intermingling with my life right now, and which is a beautiful thing, but it can also be a challenging thing if we don't take time before you go home to your family, before I go to the church for the thing. It can be a challenge if we don't allow ourselves to release this space, you know? And releasing can be as simple as taking the breath, going to the restroom to wash our hands and put on lotion, or some type of ritual
Yeah.
to reset. So that experience at the hospital reminded me of the value of pausing and releasing,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yes. Yes. And I'm going to shift to the church for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
As you were sharing your chaplaincy experience, I just thought about the ways that a pastor has to show up for people,
Mm.
often in their hardest times. And you just named something that truly happens when you go, when you're with people, you sometimes receive and you take on, even if you don't realize it, some of their stuff.
Right.
And so as a pastor, so I know that we're pausing, you're taking that time, but what else do you do in that particular space to kind of remain centered and still serve others?
The first thing for me, is to realize that although I'm doing this work in my body as Lahronda, ultimately it's not about me. So if I'm reminding myself that this work is not about me, but it's fulfilling God's call and God's purpose, that helps me to maintain a perspective and proper barriers, proper boundaries, not barriers, but boundaries.
Yeah.
Um, and also, as I'm interacting with people, with congregation members, um, as pastors, we get, and I'm thinking about a situation that I had
Mm-hmm.
Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking about a situation that I had with a parishioner who had a complaint. And not to invalidate her complaint about me, not to invalidate this, but I had to remember that oftentimes when we encounter people, the first thing we get might not be the thing that needs to be given attention to.
Right.
So in the pause, in the breath, and then the listening for the stillness of the moment, and remembering that this is not about me. This is a human being who's sitting in front of me who needs grace just as much as I do, And so I think that's getting at your question.
Yeah, it definitely is.
Yeah. And that's hard to do.
Yes.
It's hard to remember that ultimately this is not about me, although I'm showing up in a particular way, but we are two human beings in need of the same grace, but maybe in a different way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That is so helpful. I think there's a special humility in the reminder that even if God has called you in the wholeness of who you are to show up, it is still God's responsibility.
Yeah. Oh, we can't control anything.
Exactly.
We have no control over anything. We're stewards. We're caretakers and caregivers of a community.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm. As you were saying that, I was thinking back to like one of my earliest memories as a child. My parents, they were always big on stewardship with us. They always wanted to make sure that that we understood that they were the ones providing the things, and our responsibility was to care for the things that they provided. And so even when we're thinking about this quote, there's a particular part where it says courage to fear, right? And I realized when I was a child, I didn't fear many things. But as I got older, and I saw just the ways in which the world can move in a way that I could not control, fear just has a way of creeping in at times. So how do you manage fear? Someone's listening and they know fear, maybe due to trauma or just other things in their life, is something that's present. How do you manage or deal with that? And how does quiet help you?
Yes. The first thing, as you were talking about your parents and the lessons that they taught as it relates to stewardship, I always think about my grandfather and being with him in the garden. I talk about being with my grandparents in the garden a lot, but they taught me stillness and appreciating life, and right there in the moment. So as it relates to fear, most of the time, fear sets in when we're outside of the moment. Fear sets in when we're thinking about what could be or what has already been, what has already happened. So in the stillness of the moment, if you're truly in the moment, there is no fear. There's only what is. There's only what is.
Dr. Little, that is so helpful. That is so helpful because it is so true. The fear that I felt was often when I was trying to go back into my memory bank and then recount what happened. And then now I'm thinking, well, if this happened in the past, then surely it can happen to me again in the future. But it's a jaded perspective.
It is, it's not unwarranted.
Yes.
Because we can gather wisdom from our past experiences, but those past experiences don't necessarily have to govern our way of being as it relates to fear. We can move in wisdom. Yeah. We can move in wisdom because of our past experiences.
I love that. Tell us more. What does moving in wisdom look like? Because I just love that phrasing.
Moving in wisdom is Sankofa. So what you just mentioned about your parents.
Yeah.
And no doubt where your parents get that wisdom from and stewardship came from their parents, we can reach back and gather those things that served us well and brought us to that moment that kept us. And realizing that up till this moment, somebody prayed for us and continues to pray for us. And there are people even now who are thinking about us that we don't even know.
Yes.
We don't know about. I think that's wisdom, and it's also a matter of self-care. Self-care is knowing that I am loved, I am cared for, and I'm never, ever alone. That's what moving in wisdom is like. Because once we forget, any piece of that, then we start making, we are in danger of making decisions that either don't need to be made or decisions that are more of a detriment than a help. So for me, moving in wisdom is realizing that I'm not alone, ever.
As you were talking, I was thinking about earlier in this series, we had an episode with Dr. Walter Earl Pfluger, and he was saying that deep down, we all have this desire to be loved, this desire to be appreciated. And sometimes if our community is not giving it to us, we'll go try to take it.
Yeah.
And as you were talking and sharing, I thought back to that because I think moving in wisdom, to your point, is knowing that for yourself. Because if you're consistently looking for your community to give it, then we'll start doing things to seek validation.
Yes. And we can cultivate community. We forget that too. You know, moving in wisdom is knowing that, okay, this community, this particular community is not showing me love. I have the agency and the freedom to cultivate, to find another community, to cultivate a community where I can feel love, and not just feel love, but I can express love in holistic, ethical, and moral ways, and in ways that will facilitate flourishing and thriving, not just for myself, but for all people.
Yes. There's something about finding new community that can be fearful. Even if you understand that maybe your current placement is not best, it may not even be what God has for you. Something about transition and change and moving can make us anxious. So how would you encourage someone to take that next step? Maybe they're listening to this podcast and trying to find quiet. Maybe the words of Howard Thurman are even ringing in their spirits right now. How would you encourage them to take that next step?
The thing that's coming to me right now is to first interrogate the fear. Where's it coming from? Where's that anxiety coming from? Is it coming from past experience? Is it coming from a feeling of not being enough? Is it coming from, I don't have enough to give? Which may well be the case. If I go to this community, there's going to be a particular expectation, and I'm not even sure that I have it to give. That's a very real thing, because sometimes we give and give and give, and not realizing that we've just about tapped out.
Yeah.
And so we're used to giving. rather than sitting still and being quiet. So interrogate the fear. And sometimes we may need help with that. I love that we talk more about therapy.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that people have a greater sense of awareness around mental health. I'm also aware that we are in a time in which our weaknesses or our challenges are more prevalent than ever. I would argue that I don't know if it is from our greater awareness or the challenges of the moment, probably a little bit of both,
yeah.
that we are as unhealthy as we've ever been. So we have to interrogate the fear, get the help, and then follow through. So our communities that we're cultivating has to have accountability. And sometimes accountability looks like, sis, I see you. You know, how can I help?
And some of us get stuck. We recognize it, we see it, but the accountability of even someone else saying, where can I help? Or maybe even asking for it. Sometimes we're afraid to do that
We're
as well.
afraid to ask. We're afraid to admit that I'm drowning and I don't know how to swim. You know, I need a life jacket. Sometimes that's hard to admit, especially if if you're a high achiever, for whatever reason that might be. If you're a high achiever, if you're used to accomplishing things, if you're the one in the group known for getting things done, check on them people.
Check on your strong friends.
Check on your strong friends.
Dr. Little, you've shared so much amazing information with us today. So I do just want to ask one last question. How does God provide stillness in our lives?
Since God provides stillness, there is no place that we can't experience it. We're experiencing stillness right now, I would suggest. And even in a noisy room where people are moving about, we can experience stillness by realizing that there is something beyond the movement and the noise. And I can go there by breathing, by consciously breathing deeply and realizing that I have a heartbeat and that God is always present.
Amen is the only thing that comes to mind. Because God creates it, it is always available. That is so helpful. Thank you.
Thank you
so much
this
for
was
coming.
Good.
Thank you for being a part of this episode. I know that those listening just have a way forward, which is really always our goal. So
this was a great reminder for me as well. This was good. Thank you for the opportunity.